I've been standing on this same cold steel floor for as long as I can remember. My feet planted where 10,000 generations before me have toiled in silent obedience. Nobody knows their names, and frankly, I wouldn't either if I were them. Welcome to my world. Apartment 77B in the sprawling hive city of New Ashford, somewhere deep in the industrial heart of England's Midlands. The place is a cramped box of 40 feet by 26 feet and about 10 feet high, and it's been home to my family for nearly 4 decades. The walls are painted that dull mustard yellow color the council insists on, supposedly proven to boost productivity and promote compliance. I'm convinced it's just to make us all look like walking corned beef cans. The paint's peeling, the pipes overhead groan with scalding steam for the fancy offices above, and the floor, well, it vibrates constantly with the roar of machinery grinding away several stories below. Sometimes, when the lights flicker and die, the walls seem to breathe. I swear on my mum's best teapot. I'm Matt Vernon, a level 7 assembly line worker at the local munitions factory. Husband to Sarah, father to twins Charlie and Lucy. We live in this shoebox of an apartment, passed down from my grandfather to my father and now to me. Official papers with the royal seal guarantee we can stay so long as we keep up with the quotas, keep our heads down, and keep the faith. The day starts like clockwork. My ancient brass clock chimes 6 times. Thin, metallic, barely audible over the hum of recycled air that smells like burnt toast, machine oil, and something else. Something wrong. It's been growing stronger lately, and it's creeping me out. Sarah's always the first up. She's 42 but looks older, thanks to the dim lighting and the air that feels like it's been filtered through a sieve. Her hands are stained a permanent shade of teal from the dye vats at the textile mill where she operates loom 777, churning out fabric 13 hours a day, 6 days a week. Sundays are for mandatory chapel services, where old Reverend Hanks drones on about the Queen's love, humanity's place in the stars, and the great work we're all part of. Sarah mouths the words silently, lips cracked and dry from the stale air. The twins, now 17, sleep on fold-out cots that turn our main living area into a bedroom every night. Charlie works the night shift fixing plasma conduits, and Lucy spends her days packaging ration bars. Both jobs were assigned without a hint of choice on their 16th birthdays by some pale-faced official with spectacles who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else but telling kids their futures. Neither has ever seen daylight, never felt the sun on their skin. Neither knows what they're missing. I dress in the standard gray jumpsuit that marks me as a factory worker. The fabric's rough, built for toughness, not comfort. Comfort's a luxury that weakens the spirit, and weakness is heresy. I clip my ID badge to my chest pocket. The photo shows a bright-eyed lad 23 years ago when I started. I barely recognize that guy anymore. Our kitchen is a single counter with a protein synthesizer and a water reclamation unit. The synthesizer spits out 3 flavors of paste: gray, brown, and yellow. Gray's your basic nutrients, brown's got synthetic protein, and yellow's fortified with vitamins. They all taste the same, like cardboard dipped in regret. The water machine recycles waste into water, though I'm not about to ask how. Breakfast is eaten in silence. Not because we're angry with each other, but because what's there to say? Life's a loop. Work, quotas, regulations repeat. Yesterday, today, tomorrow, they're identical. This is the gift of our society. Zero uncertainty. Everyone knows their role, their value to the machine. Reverend Hanks calls it peace. I call it monotony with a side of despair. But lately, things have been off. It started 3 months ago with a scratching noise inside the walls. I thought it was just the building settling. After all, 77BS been part of this hive for centuries. Structural reports say it's sound, but this noise is different. Then came the whispers. Late at night, when the family is dead to the world, I lie awake listening. The usual sounds. Pipes gurgling, distant machines humming, footsteps outside. But now, soft voices murmur from behind the wall next door, where the Cormac family lives. The weird thing, they work the second shift and should be asleep when I hear the voices. I thought about reporting it. There's a form for noise complaints, but filing it means an investigation, and investigations mean relocation. And relocation means leaving the only home we've ever known. Or worse, the authorities might find more than just noise. The wall is the same dull mustard as the rest, marked by years of grime and tiny dents. But now there's a crack near the ceiling I swear wasn't there before. Just a thin, almost invisible line, about 6 inches long. When I press my ear to it, the whispers get clearer, but the words remain scrambled, like someone speaking underwater. Work is my escape. Down 7 levels beneath us lies the factory. A vast cavern of steel, sparks, and noise. It's 1.2 miles long and half a mile wide, with ceilings that stretch like cathedral vaults. The air smells of hot metal, ozone, and old grease. Noise is so loud you can only shout or sign. I work Station 47, fitting guidance units into artillery shells. Same steps every time. Insert, align, seal, test, pass. I'm part of a chain. Without me, the shells won't work. Without the shells, the artillery dies. Without the artillery, the empire falls. No pressure. 12 hours later, we trudge back up through dark tunnels to our yellow box. Sarah has dinner ready. Protein paste with synthetic veg that tastes like boiled cardboard and a side of boredom. Charlie comes home pale from radiation exposure. Lucy sneaks in after midnight, packaging rations like a ghost. Evenings are routine. Sarah cleans, I fill out reports, the twins study manuals for jobs they barely want. Education ended years ago. Now it's all training for obedience. Tonight, the whispers return, but louder, more urgent. I set my tablet down and edge toward the wall. Sarah doesn't notice. Charlie's asleep, breathing shallow. I press my ear to the crack. The voices are definitely coming from inside. More than 3, maybe 6 or 7. The crack has grown, now a foot long, twisting like a diseased vine. I touch it. It's warm. That shouldn't be possible. The walls aren't heated, and the room is steady at 18 degrees Celsius. Something's wrong, and I'm the only one who sees it. I lean back, heart pounding, wondering if I'm going mad, or if something is watching me from the cracks. The morning light, or what passes for it down here, filters weakly through the grime-coated window as I wake, the stale air clinging like a damp blanket. Sarah's already up, her fingers stained that familiar teal, her eyes tired but steady. She's dressed in her usual work uniform. A faded navy jumpsuit cinched at the waist, scuffed steel-toe boots, and a simple silver chain necklace, her one concession to vanity in this bleak place. The slight shimmer of her necklace catches the dim light. It's almost sensual in contrast to the drab surroundings. A small flicker of life amid the monotony. She greets me with a soft smile, but there's worry in her eyes. I don't mention the whispers or the crack. I can see how it unsettles her just to watch me pacing, listening to walls like a madman. Instead, I focus on breakfast, the usual paste, gray and unappetizing, and water that tastes faintly metallic. Lucy and Charlie shuffle in, rubbing sleep from their eyes. Charlie's pale skin almost translucent under the flickering light, veins tracing faint blue lines along his forearms. A map of exhaustion from his night shift. Lucy's hair is pulled back in a tight ponytail, strands escaping to frame her sharp cheekbones. She's wearing the standard factory-issued coveralls, but the way she moves, deliberate, careful, belies a quiet strength. The twins barely speak at the table. Their conversations are replaced by the hum of the ventilation and the ever-present, low murmur of machinery vibrating through the floorboards. It's a breakfast ritual of silence, punctuated only by the occasional clink of plastic utensils scraping against the metal plates. I try to shake off the unease gnawing at me, but the whispers from last night cling stubbornly to my thoughts. I glance at the cracked wall, its sinister tendrils seeming to grow larger with every passing hour. I almost swear I saw it breathe. Before heading to work, I grab my ID badge from the counter. A faded photo of a younger, more hopeful me staring back. I clip it to my chest, the cold metal grounding me. The gray jumpsuit I put on is scratchy and stiff, the fabric stiffened by countless washes. It's designed for endurance, not comfort, and I wear it like a second skin, a uniform of submission. The journey down to the factory is a 20-minute descent through a labyrinth of lift shafts and service tunnels. each step taking me further from the flickering amber glow of home and deeper into the belly of the machine. The walls here are lined with pipes and conduits, their surfaces slick with condensation, occasionally interrupted by maintenance crews. Ghostly figures in reflective vests, their headlamps cutting through the gloom. I never speak to them. Our shifts don't align, and unofficial conversations are frowned upon. At my station, I'm greeted by the relentless cacophony of presses and cutters. The smell of burnt metal and ozone assaults my nostrils as I take my place in the assembly line. The work is mechanical, repetitive, and unyielding. Insert the guidance chip. Align the connectors. Seal with industrial adhesive. Run diagnostics. Pass the shell down the line. My hands move with practiced precision, but my mind wanders. The whispers echo in my head, their urgency growing, like a secret calling across the void. I catch fragments, words like hunger, darkness, and between spaces. The crack in the wall seems to pulse in time with the whispering voices, as if alive. Mid-shift, my supervisor, Mrs. Vance, a thin woman with sharp eyes and a clipboard always at the ready, approaches. Her voice is barely audible over the machinery, clinical and precise. "Vernon, your output's dropped by 7% over the last 10 days, she says, tapping her slate. Any explanation? I keep my focus steady as I respond. Acknowledged, supervisor. I will correct the deficiency immediately. Efficiency is paramount. She nods, making a note. Remember, when one falls behind, the whole line suffers. I nod, but inside, a storm brews. Concentration slips like sand through my fingers, pulled toward the mysteries growing in my own home. After the shift, I return to 77B, the familiar yellow walls seeming to close in tighter than ever. Sarah is waiting, her eyes scanning my face for signs of wear. I avoid her gaze and head toward the crack. Pressing my ear against the wall, the whispers are louder now. Voices overlapping in an indecipherable chorus, urgent and pleading. The edges of the crack have grown jagged, almost organic, like the veins of some monstrous tree reaching through the plaster. I place a hand on the wall. It's warm, unnervingly warm, as if something breathes just beyond. Sarah calls softly from the kitchen. "Matt, dinner's ready." I step back, torn between the life I know and the darkness unfolding within my walls. The question lingers in the air. What's alive in this crack? And how long before it reaches out beyond these walls? Evening settles over New Ashford like a heavy, soot-stained blanket as I sit in our cramped living room, the dull ochre walls closing in around me. Sarah moves about quietly, her slender frame silhouetted against the dim amber light from the single overhead bulb. Tonight, she's dressed in a simple but form-fitting gray blouse paired with a worn black skirt that brushes just above her knees. Her feet are bare, toes curling slightly on the cold metal floor. The subtle curve of her neck, the faint sheen on her skin from the day's toil. All of it draws my attention despite the weight pressing on my mind. It's strange how, even in these bleak surroundings, small moments of intimacy persist. Dinner is the usual. A plate of that identical, tasteless paste, its texture reminding me of wet cardboard, with a side of pale synthetic vegetables grown in the hydroponic tanks 3 floors down. Sarah eats mechanically, her lips pressed together, eyes distant. Charlie and Lucy are quieter than usual, their youthful energy seemingly drained by their exhausting shifts. I try to break the silence. "Lucy, how's the packaging line treating you?" She shrugs, her voice barely a whisper. "Same as always, Dad. Just another day." Charlie leans back, rubbing his pale forearm, veins like tiny rivers beneath his thinning skin. "I'm beat. Fixing those plasma conduits is no picnic." I wish I could say something to lift their spirits, but words feel hollow. Instead, my gaze drifts back to the cracked wall near the ceiling, the jagged fissure now stretching nearly 1.5 feet, twisting like the root of some malignant vine. It seems to pulse faintly in the low light, as if breathing. Later, after the twins have folded out their cots and fallen into restless sleep, Sarah retreats to the kitchenette to clean the synthesizer filters. Her hands move deftly, fingers stained a dull teal from the dye vats she works with daily. She hums softly, a melancholy tune that threads through the quiet like a whispered prayer. I remain by the wall, the whispers growing louder, more distinct. I press my ear once more to the crack. This time, I catch fragments. Words warped and distorted but unmistakably calls for help, darkness, and hunger. The voice patterns overlap, weaving a strange, hypnotic rhythm that sends a chill through me. Suddenly, a sharp scratching sound cuts through the murmurs, like claws scraping against metal. I start, pulling away from the wall, heart pounding. The air feels heavy, thick with a scent I can't place. Something organic and unsettling beneath the usual metallic tang. I glance towards Sarah, who hasn't noticed my unease, her back turned as she wipes down the synthesizer. Part of me envies her ignorance. I know what I have to do. Tomorrow I'll visit the neighbors. Maybe the Cormacs next door have heard something. Maybe this isn't just in my head. But as I prepare to leave the room, the lights flicker once more and die, plunging us into darkness. The hum of the ventilation falters, replaced by an eerie silence broken only by the faintest whisper, calling my name. Matt, Matt. I freeze, breath caught in my throat. The walls close in, and somewhere deep inside, something waits. The next morning, the pale gray light filtering through the grimy window does little to lift the weight pressing down on me. I dress quickly in my usual gray jumpsuit, the fabric stiff and scratchy against my skin, and grab my worn ID badge. Today, I'm determined to find answers, or at least some company in this growing madness. I step into the corridor outside apartment 77B, the narrow hallway lined with chipped ochre walls and flickering overhead lights. The air is thick with the scent of machine oil, burnt toast, and that indefinable something else, something organic and wrong. I make my way next door to 77A, the Cormac family's unit. Their door is a dull steel slab, marked with the faded number and a small, official placard indicating their occupancy. I knock, the sound echoing down the empty corridor. After a moment, the door opens a crack, revealing a young woman I don't recognize. Pale skin, dark hair pulled into a simple braid, wearing the standard issue coveralls of a factory worker, though something about her demeanor feels off, like she's trying too hard to appear casual. "Can I help you?" she asks, voice clipped. "I'm Matt Vernon from 77B. I wanted to speak with the Cormac family about some issues with the building," I say, keeping my tone neutral. She glances over her shoulder, then back at me. "They're not home. Maybe come back later." "Do you know when they might be back?" I ask, trying to keep the unease from my voice. She hesitates, then says, "I'll let them know you called. They'll get in touch if needed." The door closes before I can reply. I stand there, the hollow sound ringing in my ears. Something about her response feels rehearsed, like a line from a play she's been forced to memorize. I move down the hall to apartment 77C, home to the Brenny's family, an elderly couple who keep to themselves. The door opens to reveal Marcus Brenny's, a stooped man with weathered skin and eyes that have seen too many winters. He wears a threadbare cardigan over a faded shirt, and his hands tremble slightly as he clasps mine in greeting. I explain the situation, careful to keep my voice low. He listens thoughtfully, nodding slowly. "Funny you should mention it," he says. "Elena and I have noticed odd things too. Temperature swings, flickering lights, strange noises at night. It's like the building's alive in ways it shouldn't be." His admission is both a relief and a new source of dread. I ask if he'd be willing to provide a written statement to support a formal complaint. He agrees, but with a cautious glance around the corridor. "If we're going to do this, we should coordinate. A joint complaint might get more attention." I nod, understanding the risks. Collective action in the hive is tricky. Too much cooperation can be seen as dissent. But these problems aren't isolated. They're spreading. Over the next few days, Marcus and I meet discreetly in the corridor outside our apartments, whispering details, comparing notes. The crack in my wall has grown, now twisting eerily like the gnarled root of some ancient tree. Marcus shows me a similar fissure stretching from floor to ceiling in his own unit, curving in unnatural ways. Together, we compile detailed logs. Times when the whispers are loudest, measurements of the crack's growth. Notes on strange tastes in our food paste and metallic aftertastes in the water. Our findings align disturbingly well. Marcus mentions hearing scratching and breathing sounds behind his walls during the same late-night hours as my whispers. The space between our apartments is supposed to be filled with insulation, not a haunt for something alive. The joint complaint we draft is meticulous, technical, and neutral in tone. We avoid speculation, sticking to facts and measurements. It's 5 copies thick, a bureaucratic fortress of carefully chosen words. When we submit it to the local administrative office, Clerk Valdris, a middle-aged man with ink-stained fingers and thinning hair, reviews our documents with an unusual interest. "This level of detail is rare," he remarks, tapping his data slate thoughtfully. "Have you consulted your neighbors for similar issues?" I admit I haven't spoken with the Cormacs, and Marcus explains their reclusive nature. Valdris instructs us to obtain verification forms signed by adjacent residents before the investigation can proceed. The bureaucracy tightens its grip. I can't shake the feeling that the walls are watching, listening, waiting. The whispers grow louder still, and the cracks pulse beneath my fingertips like a heartbeat not my own. What's hiding between these walls? And how long before it reaches beyond? The following evening, after my shift ends and the mechanical hum of the factory fades behind me, I stand once again before the cold steel door of apartment 77A. The corridor is unusually quiet, the flickering lights casting long shadows that slither along the chipped ochre walls like restless ghosts. I knock firmly, hope and apprehension tangled in my chest. The door creaks open just a crack, revealing that same pale woman with the dark braid. Her eyes flicker with a hint of something unreadable, guarded, maybe even wary. She's dressed in simple coveralls, but there's a subtle tension in her posture that sets my nerves on edge. "Back so soon?" she asks, voice low and guarded. "I need to speak with the Cormacs about the verification form," I say, trying to keep my tone steady. "It's important. We have to work together on this." She hesitates, then steps aside just enough to reveal a narrow corridor behind her, dimly lit and empty. "They're not here. Haven't been for days." The words hit me like a cold slap. "Not here? Where are they?" She shrugs, avoiding my gaze. "I don't know. They didn't say. I'm just covering the place while they're away." I swallow hard, heart pounding. The absence of the Cormacs, the strange woman's evasiveness. It all feels like a bad dream tightening its grip. "Is there anyone else living here?" I ask cautiously. "No. Just me. Temporary." Her voice trails off, eyes darting down the corridor as if expecting something, or someone. I nod slowly, realizing that pressing further won't help. "If they return, please have them contact me," I say quietly. She nods, closing the door before I can say more. I wander back down the corridor, the flickering light playing tricks on my mind. The walls seem to pulse, the familiar whispers growing louder, more insistent. I press my ear to the cracked surface of 77B, catching the fragmented voices weaving through the plaster. Later that night, I meet Marcus outside his apartment. His aged face is etched with concern as I recount the encounter. "They're gone," I say grimly. "And that woman, she's not one of us." Marcus nods slowly. "We're in deeper than I thought." We pore over our joint complaint, weighing our next move. The administrative office requires signed statements from all adjacent residents, but the Cormac's absence throws a wrench into the process. We decide to submit what we have, hoping the authorities take notice. Days later, a team arrives. Investigator Teresa Vance, Inspector Jonas Kreber, and technical specialist Lisa Morrison. They carry equipment that looks more suited to a crime scene than a housing inspection: thermal scanners, fiber optic probes, and acoustic analyzers. The investigation begins with meticulous measurements of the cracks. Inspector Kreber's expression darkens as he examines the jagged fissures, noting their unnatural, winding shapes that defy typical structural damage. "Pressure from within," he mutters. "But there's nothing in the building plans that could explain this." Specialist Morrison inserts a miniature camera into the crack in my wall. The images that flicker across her screen freeze us all. Instead of solid insulation, there's a vast, hollow cavity, its walls organic and pulsating with an eerie life. Shadows flit through the darkness, shapes that vanish when looked at directly. She captures strange symbols etched into the surfaces, runes in no language any of us recognize. This isn't just a building fault, Morrison says, voice tight. There's something living here, something large. Thermal scans reveal multiple heat signatures, 6 or 7 distinct bodies, arranged in a disturbing pattern matching the whispers I've heard. Investigator Vance's face hardens. She radios her superiors. The response is swift. The building is declared temporarily uninhabitable. We must evacuate within 48 hours. Packing our meager possessions, I feel the walls watching, waiting. Sarah's eyes brim with unspoken fear. The twins try to mask their anxiety with forced smiles, but I see through it. As the transport vehicle pulls away from 77B, I glance back at the cracked wall, the whispers fading but never silenced. What lies within those walls is no longer a secret, and whatever it is, it's far from finished. The temporary housing assigned to us isn't much, just a converted factory block repurposed into Spartan apartments in a different sector of New Ashford's hive. Our new unit, 44D, is larger, with walls freshly painted in the same mandated mustard yellow, but it lacks the familiar creaks and shadows of 77B. The air feels cleaner here, less oppressive, though the sterile atmosphere carries its own coldness. Sarah tries to make the best of it, unpacking our few belongings with quiet determination. She's dressed in a soft blue sweater that contrasts sharply with the drab surroundings, her hair pulled back loosely, softening her tired face. There's a subtle curve to her lips as she arranges our worn kitchenware, a fragile attempt at normality. Charlie and Lucy share a small room, their faces pale but relieved to have escaped the suffocating walls of our former home. Charlie's hands tremble slightly as he sets down his tools, the radiation exposure from his night shifts still evident in the faint blue veins beneath his skin. Lucy's eyes dart nervously, as if expecting the whispers to follow us here. The mornings are quiet but tense. We eat the same bland protein paste, now slightly fresher, with synthetic vegetables that taste less metallic. The water flows clear from the reclamation unit without that lingering metallic aftertaste. Interviews begin the day after our arrival. Officials, their faces obscured by official masks of indifference, question us individually in small, windowless rooms. I'm grilled about the whispers, the cracks, and what I heard between the walls. They want every detail, the words, the timing, the sensations. Their questions are thorough, sometimes probing into thoughts and dreams, as if trying to uncover something deeper. I stick to the facts, wary of revealing too much. Sarah's session is shorter. She reports nothing unusual beyond my strange behavior. The twins, predictably, deny any direct experiences. Marcus Brennies undergoes the longest interrogation, his detailed observations forming the backbone of the investigation. His aged hands tremble as he reviews architectural plans and photos of cracks, the weight of their significance pressing heavily on him. Life here is regimented. Meals are served in shifts designed to keep evacuees apart, recreation time scheduled to prevent group discussions about our shared ordeal. It's a subtle but effective way to isolate us, to prevent us from piecing together the full scope of what's happening. Weeks pass. The official word comes. We're approved for permanent rehousing in a nearby complex, slightly better than before but far from home. The new apartment, 59B, is brighter, with walls freshly painted ochre, a protein synthesizer that functions flawlessly, and water that tastes clean. Our factory assignments transfer accordingly. I'm placed at Assembly Station 23, doing the same monotonous work fitting guidance systems into artillery shells. The quota remains relentless, 47 units per shift, 0 defects tolerated. But in the quiet moments, when the family is occupied elsewhere, I find myself pressing my ear to the walls of 59B. They're silent. No whispers, no breathing, no strange warmth beneath the paint. Yet sometimes, in the dead of night, I swear I hear something distant. A soft murmur, a faint scratching, a voice calling from the darkness between the walls. Not here, but somewhere else in the vast hive. The Empire's machine grinds on, processing us through our roles, maintaining order. But beneath the surface, in the spaces between, something stirs. And I can't shake the feeling that the whispers have only just begun. The new apartment, 59B, felt almost alien at first, too clean, too quiet. The ochre walls gleamed under the harsh overhead lighting, freshly painted and unblemished, a stark contrast to the peeling, stained surfaces of our old home. The air was crisp, almost sterile, lacking that familiar mix of industrial grime and stale breath that had become so oddly comforting. Sarah moved through the space like a ghost reclaiming territory. Tonight, she wore a soft, charcoal gray blouse that hugged her slender frame, paired with fitted trousers and simple flats. Her hair was loose, cascading over her shoulders in soft waves, a rare softness that seemed almost rebellious in this utilitarian box. A delicate silver locket hung from her neck, catching the light, a small shimmer of warmth in the cold. Dinner was the usual pace, but tonight, Sarah had managed to supplement it with some synthetic herbs from the hydroponic garden in the communal kitchen, lending a faint, unfamiliar flavor. Lucy set the table with careful precision, her fingers brushing against Sarah's wrist in a fleeting touch that spoke of the unspoken tensions between them. Charlie sat opposite, his pale face illuminated by the dim lamp, eyes shadowed but alert. We ate in silence, the paste tasting better than usual but still lacking soul. The twins exchanged tired glances, the weight of the past weeks pressing down on them like a shroud. After dinner, as Sarah cleared the plates, I found myself drawn to the living room wall. Unlike the cracked and breathing walls of 77B, this surface was flawless, cold, smooth, and utterly silent. I pressed my ear to it, straining for any hint of those dreaded whispers. Nothing. The quiet was almost deafening. Later, when the household had settled for the night, I sat alone in the dim glow of the small lamp, my thoughts swirling. Work remained the same. Assembly line precision, inserting guidance units into shells that would end lives on distant worlds. The rhythm was mechanical, the quota unyielding. But my mind kept drifting back to the shadows between the walls. Not here, but somewhere else in the hive. The vast labyrinth of corridors, maintenance tunnels, forgotten chambers that no one spoke of. The places where light never reached, where the air hung heavy with secrets. Sometimes, when the city's distant rumble faded and the artificial silence settled, I thought I could hear faint murmurs, soft, distant, like voices calling through a tunnel in the dark. I shared none of this with Sarah or the twins. They had enough to bear. Yet, in the stillness, a nagging question gnawed at me. If the whispers had been contained here, what else lurked in the forgotten corners of the hive? What shadows stirred in the spaces between spaces? And more urgently, was I truly safe, or merely waiting for the silence to break again? Weeks passed in the cold routine of 59B, each day blurring into the next with mechanical precision. The factory's relentless rhythm beat steadily beneath my skin. Insert, align, seal, test, pass. 47 shells per shift, no exceptions. But beneath the surface of the daily grind, a restless unease began to take root. One evening, as the fading amber light filtered through the grimy window, I found Sarah sitting alone on the threadbare couch, her fingers absently tracing the delicate silver locket resting against her chest. Her eyes, usually so steady, flickered with an unspoken worry. She wore a soft burgundy sweater, the fabric hugging the gentle curve of her waist, and a simple chain bracelet that caught the light just so, hinting at a quiet resilience beneath her exhaustion. I sat beside her, the silence between us thick but familiar. Finally, she spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "Matt, have you been hearing things? Strange sounds. Whispers." I hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Yes, sometimes in the quietest hours. Not here, though. Somewhere else in the hive." Her gaze met mine, a flicker of fear and understanding passing between us. "I thought it was just me. Since we left the old place, I felt like something's watching. Waiting. The twins joined us, their youthful faces pale but earnest. Lucy's dark hair fell loosely around her shoulders, her eyes wide with a mix of curiosity and dread. Charlie's skin was still translucent, veins faintly visible beneath the surface, but his voice was steady. "We've been hearing things too," Lucy admitted. "Soft voices late at night, like someone calling." Charlie nodded. "And sometimes the walls seem to shift, like they're breathing." I swallowed hard, the weight of their words settling over me like a shroud. That night, sleep was elusive. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to deepen, twisting and stretching beyond their bounds. I lay awake, listening to the silence, waiting for the whispers to begin. And when they did, they were louder than before, urgent, fragmented phrases echoing in the darkness. I pressed my ear to the wall, heart pounding. Words floated through the air: hunger, darkness, spaces between spaces. The walls no longer felt like barriers but thin membranes separating us from something vast and unknowable. What had we brought with us from 77B? And how long before the whispers found their way inside these walls? The hive was alive, and somewhere in its depths, the darkness was growing. The days that followed were heavy with tension, the kind that settles deep into your bones and refuses to shake loose. At work, my hands moved through the motions, fitting guidance units into shells destined for distant battlefields. But my mind was elsewhere, haunted by whispered voices and shadows lurking just beyond perception. One evening, as the factory's relentless drone faded behind me, I found myself drawn to the communal recreation hall, a cold, gray space where evacuees gathered in fragmented groups, their faces etched with worry and fatigue. I spotted Marcus Brennies across the room, his weathered features drawn tight with concern. We exchanged a brief nod, the silence between us heavier than words. That night, back in 59B, the whispers returned. Not distant now, but close, pressing against the walls like a living thing. I sat in the dim glow of the lamp, tracing the jagged patterns of light and shadow on the ochre walls. The voices spoke in broken phrases, urgent and pleading: hunger, darkness, between spaces. Suddenly, a sharp scratching echoed from the corner, like nails clawing beneath the plaster. I froze, heart pounding, as the air grew thick with a scent both foreign and familiar. Something organic, decayed, and utterly wrong. Sarah stirred beside me, her eyes fluttering open. "Matt?" she whispered, voice trembling. I nodded, unable to speak. The room seemed to pulse, the walls breathing softly in the darkness. Over the following days, strange occurrences multiplied. Lights flickered unpredictably, the protein synthesizer occasionally emitted foul odors, and the water carried a metallic tang that lingered unpleasantly. The twins grew restless, their youthful energy giving way to whispered fears and sleepless nights. Determined to understand, I began documenting every anomaly, the timing, the sounds, the smells, hoping to find a pattern, a clue. But the more I recorded, the more the darkness seemed to close in. One evening, as I reviewed my notes, a sudden chill swept through the apartment. The room plunged into darkness as the lights died, plunging me into a silence so complete it roared in my ears. And then, from the blackness, a voice, clear and unmistakable, whispered my name. "Matt." I reached out blindly, heart hammering, fingers brushing cold air where no one stood. The hive's shadows were no longer just whispers. They had awakened. The blackout lasted only moments, but in that darkness, time seemed to stretch into an endless void. My breath caught, every nerve alight with a primal fear I couldn't name. The faint glow of my data slate flickered weakly, casting eerie shadows across the freshly painted ochre walls of 59B. I sat frozen, the whispered echo of my name still lingering in the air like a ghost's caress. Sarah stirred beside me, the soft rustle of her breath the only sign she was awake. I swallowed hard, fighting the urge to call out, to shatter the silence with reassurance. But some fears, especially those born in shadows, are better faced alone. In the following days, the atmosphere thickened with unease. The subtle changes in our home grew impossible to ignore. The protein paste tasted faintly bitter. The water sometimes carried a metallic aftertaste that clung to my tongue. The walls, once silent and still, seemed to breathe in the corners of my vision, their ochre surfaces shifting imperceptibly, as if alive. The twins avoided the living room after dark, and Sarah's laughter, once a balm to my weary soul, became rare and fragile. I found myself wandering the halls at night, tracing the edges of cracks that were no longer just fractures and plaster, but sinewy veins winding through the heart of this hive. I knew, deep down, that what we faced wasn't confined to our walls or even our building. It was something ancient and patient, lurking in the spaces between spaces, waiting for the moment to emerge fully. One evening, as I stood by the window, gazing out over the labyrinth of Hive City, the endless honeycomb of metal and shadow stretching into infinity, I felt a presence behind me, cold and undeniable. Turning slowly, I caught a glimpse of movement, a shadow slipping just beyond the edge of light. The whispers returned, louder now, a chorus of voices weaving promises and threats, hunger and darkness entwined in a dreadful symphony. And then I understood. The walls had never truly been empty. They were listening, they were watching, and they were waiting. As the city's lights flickered and the night deepened, I realized that our story was far from over. Somewhere, deep within the hive, the cracks were growing wider, and the whispers were calling others home.